Tom Aspinall has finally been able to move on from the long, drawn-out Jon Jones saga, and in doing so, he's offering fans a rare glimpse behind the curtain of how that situation really played out. For over a year, Aspinall was labeled as the interim heavyweight champion, with critics suggesting he was sitting back and waiting for Jones instead of staying active. But according to the now undisputed heavyweight king, that narrative is misleading. In reality, he says, he was caught in a cycle of repeated promises and delays from the UFC, all while trying to keep himself ready for what he was constantly told would be the biggest fight of his career. Speaking in detail with TNT Sports, Aspinall revealed that several times during 2024 and early 2025, the UFC directly told him to prepare for Jones. There were a lot of times when the UFC would tell me, right, the Jon Jones fight is happening in 3 months, Aspinall said. So we'd start the training camp, the intensity would up, and then the date would get moved. That happened like 3 or 4 times, and then, eventually, he retired. Each time, he explained, he ramped up his training, endured the grueling grind of a heavyweight camp, and then had to deal with the emotional and physical letdown of the matchup collapsing again. Aspinall emphasized that the perception of him waiting on the sidelines was completely inaccurate. It wasn't like I was literally sat waiting for the full year, he clarified. I did think that the fight was going to come. Everyone was saying, "Why are you waiting?" I wasn't waiting. I was getting told that the fight was happening, so there was nothing I could really do. My hands were completely tied by the UFC. The comments paint a clearer picture of just how frustrating the situation was for him, caught between the UFC's plans for a super fight and his own desire to compete more often. With Jones now officially retired, Aspinall has been elevated to undisputed champion and is free to focus on carving out his own legacy without the cloud of bones hanging over him. That journey begins in earnest when he takes on Ciryl Gane in the main event of UFC 321 on October 25 in Abu Dhabi. It will be Aspinall's first defense of the undisputed title, and he enters the bout as a strong betting favorite. Gane, despite being a former interim champion himself, has stumbled in his biggest opportunities, losing both of his previous attempts at undisputed gold. For Aspinall, that pattern is one he's determined to reinforce. Confidence level's great, Aspinall said on his YouTube channel, making it clear he sees Gane as just another obstacle on the way to solidifying his reign. I believe that, well, I am the best heavyweight in the world, but I want to show that I'm the best heavyweight in the world. Ciryl Gane's lost 2 title shots, and I want to give him his 3rd title shot loss and get him out of there. For the British champion, defeating Gane isn't just about defending his belt, it's about eliminating a rival from the title picture entirely and stamping his authority on a division that has been in flux for years. Aspinall is coming off one of his most impressive performances to date, a knockout win over Curtis Blaydes that served as his interim title defense. That victory reminded fans of his devastating power and well-rounded skill set, and now, with the UFC heavyweight crown firmly in his possession, he's no longer chasing validation through Jones. Instead, he has the chance to build his own legacy on his own terms. A win in Abu Dhabi would not only cement him as the rightful heir to the throne, but open the door to a host of new challenges, from surging contenders to potential super fights.
Sean O'Malley has officially thrown his hat into the mix for the UFC's White House card, adding his name to an ever-growing list of fighters eager to be part of what promises to be a historic event. Since Dana White and the UFC confirmed plans to run a show at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue next year, big names like Conor McGregor, Jon Jones, and others have publicly expressed interest in participating, recognizing both the prestige and the once-in-a-lifetime nature of such a platform. Now, Sugar O'Malley is making it clear that he wants a spot as well, and he's framing the opportunity not just as a fight, but as a career-defining moment. On his podcast, O'Malley broke down his interest, noting that if Cory Sandhagen wins his upcoming bantamweight title bout, the potential exists for a high-stakes matchup between the 2 elite 135-pound fighters. "Yeah, the White House card," O'Malley said. "If Cory goes out there and wins, and I beat whoever is next, that's interesting. But regardless, I want to fight in the next 4 to 5 months or whatever, so that I'll also be ready for that." He further added, UFC said the White House card could be in June, International Fight Week, or July. So if I can get one in early next year or at the end of the year, one of the two, count me in. I want to be on that card. Dude, being on the Sphere card and the White House card, these are legendary moments that are once-in-a-lifetime moments. O'Malley and Sandhagen have yet to face each other inside the octagon, which makes the prospect of that matchup all the more tantalizing for fans. If Sandhagen defeats reigning champion Merab Dvalishvili at UFC 320 on October 4th, the path could be cleared for a marquee bout between O'Malley and the new champ, giving both fighters a chance to etch their names into UFC history in front of a global audience. Of course, O'Malley's path isn't without hurdles. He is coming off back-to-back losses to Dvalishvili, which means he will need to climb back into contention with a strong showing in his next fight. Rumors have suggested a potential clash with 5th-ranked Song Yadong in late 2025 or early 2026, which could serve as a critical stepping stone. A highlight reel finish there would not only restore momentum, but could also position O'Malley as the perfect foil for Sandhagen, assuming the latter holds the belt. With the White House card representing such a high-profile and historic stage, the stakes are enormous. For O'Malley, it's not just about adding another win to his record, it's about participating in one of the most unique and widely visible fights in MMA history. The combination of timing, potential title implications, and national attention makes this a rare opportunity, and Sugar is making it clear that he's ready to seize it if the UFC calls his name. If all the pieces align, O'Malley getting back in the win column, Sandhagen emerging as champion, and both fighters healthy, the White House card could host one of the most talked-about bantamweight bouts in recent memory, giving fans a glimpse at two of the division's top athletes competing in a setting that transcends the typical arena atmosphere. It's the kind of spectacle that could define careers, elevate profiles, and create a historic chapter in the UFC's ever-evolving story.
Alex Pereira is fully locked into his UFC 320 training camp in Las Vegas, preparing for a high-stakes rematch with Magomed Ankalaev at the site of their March showdown. Back at UFC 313, Ankalaev had decisively taken the title from Pereira, ending the Brazilian's brief but memorable run as champion. Since then, Pereira has shifted gears, cutting back on public appearances and devoting himself entirely to reclaiming the belt. Even in the midst of intense preparation, however, he's managed to maintain the mischievous personality fans know him for, recently pranking fellow Brazilian Renato Moicano in a phone call that left the lightweight contender momentarily rattled. The prank unfolded after Moicano had interviewed Pereira's head coach Glover Teixeira. Pereira called Moicano, claiming the questions in the interview were messed up and had caused tension within his team. "I know you're still learning, but I'm a guy who speaks the truth," Pereira teased. "After this interview, Glover changed with me. You want to put us against each other." Moicano nervously laughed and tried to defuse the situation, replying, "I doubt it, man. You have to respect the master." Pereira countered with his trademark humor, insisting he was also a master in this area. There are two masters. The conversation escalated briefly as Moicano questioned whether a single interview could really cause any rift, to which Pereira replied, "It's all bullshit, man. You're not in Las Vegas right now? One day I'll find you here, man." As Moicano grew concerned, Pereira revealed that it had all been a prank, noting that he and Teixeira were sitting right next to each other and joking about why he would mess with him on a Sunday. The call showcased Pereira's playful side even as he remains laser-focused on the task ahead. Outside of the antics, Pereira is confronting one of the toughest aspects of fight preparation, the weight cut. He recently posted a video showing his current weight at 106.2 kilograms, around 234 pounds, meaning he has just over 10 days to drop roughly 29 pounds to make the 205-pound limit for UFC 320. This isn't uncharted territory for Pereira, who previously fought at 185 pounds in his early UFC career and has a flawless record of making weight.
Still, the combination of intense training, mental focus, and physical strain makes this camp particularly grueling. With his team anchored by Teixeira and a playful yet determined mindset, Pereira is balancing the demands of a punishing camp with the lighthearted moments that keep him mentally sharp. His upcoming rematch against Ankalaev isn't just about reclaiming gold. It's about proving resilience, showcasing growth, and navigating the high-pressure environment of championship MMA while maintaining the charisma that has made him one of the sport's most intriguing figures. UFC fans can expect a focused, physically primed, and psychologically sharp Pereira stepping into the octagon, with both a personal and professional mission driving every move he makes leading up to fight night. History could be on the line at UFC Perth as Neil Magny has the chance to inch closer to breaking one of the UFC's most impressive records. The Haitian sensation, a fixture in the promotion for over a decade, is set to face veteran Jake Matthews on September 27 in a welterweight clash, taking place in Matthews' home country of Australia. Magny, who has built a reputation for consistency and durability, is looking to add another win to his already impressive UFC resume during the 12th year of his career. With 23 wins in 35 UFC fights, Magny is already tied for 6th among the most active fighters in the promotion's history. But more importantly, a victory over Matthews would give him the chance to move past fellow former champions like Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira, putting him in sole possession of 2nd place on the list of fighters with the most wins in UFC history. At the moment, Magny, Holloway, Oliveira, Andrei Arlovski, and Donald Cerrone share 23 victories apiece, though none of the others are scheduled to compete at UFC Perth, leaving Magny with a unique opportunity to separate himself from the pack. A win in Australia would make Magny the 2nd winningest fighter in UFC history, bringing his total to 24 victories. While this would be a remarkable achievement, the all-time record remains firmly in the hands of Jim Miller, who boasts 27 UFC wins since his debut in 2008. Miller, much like Magny, has never captured a world title despite his legendary longevity in the sport, and he remains an active competitor, keeping the chase for the record as challenging as ever. Magny is currently 4 wins behind Miller, meaning that UFC Perth offers him the chance to narrow the gap to just 3 if he can get past Matthews on the main card. Magny enters the bout as the favorite, a testament to his experience and adaptability inside the octagon. Matthews, while a tough and seasoned opponent, will have to contend with Magny's blend of athleticism, cardio, and fight IQ, all honed over more than a decade of UFC competition. The stakes are high not just for the win-loss record, but for Magny's legacy as one of the most consistent and enduring fighters in the sport's modern era. A victory in Perth wouldn't just be another notch in his belt, it would be another step toward making history in the UFC record books. Even with the potential milestone within reach, breaking Miller's record will be no small feat. Miller, affectionately known as A10, continues to compete at a high level despite his long career, and only recently suffered a defeat to Chase Cooper at UFC 314. Magny's path to first place requires not just skill and preparation, but continued consistency over multiple fights, highlighting just how impressive his potential achievement could be. UFC Perth represents both an immediate opportunity and a larger narrative in Magny's career. A chance to reinforce his status as one of the promotion's most reliable and accomplished athletes, and perhaps, eventually, the winningest fighter in UFC history. The UFC's trip back to Rio de Janeiro this October has already taken on a life of its own, with the lineup shifting more than once and the stories around it continuing to evolve. And now another wrinkle has arrived with the news that Santiago Ponzinibbio won't be able to compete against Vicente Luque after suffering an injury that ruled him out of the event. For a brief moment, it looked as though Luque might be left in limbo, but according to reports, the promotion has moved quickly to keep him on the card,
matching him up against Spain's Joel Alvarez, who will be making the bold move up to welterweight for the first time in his UFC career. That change alone adds a layer of intrigue, as Alvarez has built his reputation as one of the most dangerous finishers at lightweight, boasting a 100% stoppage rate across his professional wins, and now fans are curious to see if that level of dominance can translate against bigger, more physically imposing opposition. For Luque, it's another test in what has been one of the most challenging stretches of his long UFC run. Once known as one of the most reliable action fighters at 170 pounds, the Silent Assassin has hit a skid, dropping 4 of his last 6, and most recently being submitted by Kevin Holland in June at UFC 316. Fighting at home in Brazil, he'll be desperate to put on a statement performance and remind both fans and the UFC brass that he remains a dangerous presence in the division. Standing across from him, Alvarez is riding a 3-fight winning streak, capped off by a thunderous knockout over Drakkar Klose in December 2024, a result that solidified his status as a surging contender before this unexpected divisional jump. With a record of 22-3 and every victory coming inside the distance, El Fenomeno is one of the rare fighters who truly lives up to his name, and a win over Luque in hostile territory could immediately put him on the welterweight radar. The rest of the UFC Rio card has been just as turbulent. Originally, the event was supposed to be headlined by a lightweight clash between former champion Charles Oliveira and Rafael Fiziev, but an injury to Fiziev forced the UFC to reshuffle once again. Oliveira remains attached to the event, but the search for a new opponent is ongoing, leaving fans waiting to see who will step up for what could still be a huge main event in front of a raucous Rio crowd. The co-main event does remain intact, however, with former flyweight king Deiveson Figueiredo continuing his bantamweight campaign against Montel Jackson. That fight has fireworks written all over it, with Figueiredo's aggressive pressure style colliding with Jackson's length, power, and steadily rising momentum in the division. Taken all together, UFC Rio feels like a card that has been through chaos, but still promises excitement, with local heroes like Luque and Oliveira looking to deliver in front of their home fans, rising names like Alvarez willing to take risks to make a mark, and proven champions like Figueiredo trying to reinvent themselves in new weight classes. The Pharmacy Arena is set to host the event on October 11, and while the final lineup is still being pieced together, the night is already shaping up to deliver the kind of drama and unpredictability that has defined the UFC's history in Brazil. Robert Whittaker has never been the type to sit quietly on the sidelines, and despite his recent struggles inside the octagon, he's already looking ahead to a return that could remind fans and the UFC brass of exactly why he's long been considered one of the best middleweights of his generation. The former champion has admitted that he feels a bit iced out of the title picture at 185 pounds, especially after back-to-back losses to Khamzat Chimaev and Rainier de Ridder left him further from a shot at reclaiming gold than he's been in years. But Whittaker, known affectionately as Bobby Knuckles, isn't dwelling on the negatives. Instead, he's targeting a high-profile clash that would keep him firmly in the conversation. Appearing on the Arcade podcast, Whittaker stated his intentions clearly. He wants to fight in Sydney next February, ideally in front of a raucous home crowd, and the opponent he has in mind is none other than Sean Strickland. Whittaker explained that Strickland has been on his radar for a while, describing the matchup as one that makes sense stylistically and one that fans would be eager to see. He also acknowledged the potential sticking point, Strickland's reluctance to fight outside of the United States. "I'd love to fight Sean Strickland," Whittaker said. "I think it'd be a good fight. He always brings people to cards. I don't think he'll come all the way to Australia, but let's see what happens." For Whittaker, the bout is about more than just getting back in the win column. It's about re-establishing himself as a relevant player in a division that has seen a revolving door of champions in recent years. It didn't take long for Strickland to deliver his response, and in typical fashion, he didn't mince words. The former champion has been vocal in the past about his disdain for fighting abroad, and when a fan brought Whittaker's call-out to his attention on X, Strickland's answer was simple and direct: "Never fighting out of America again, LOL." That statement reflects not only his personal preferences, but also his past complaints about fighting internationally, including issues he's expressed with Australia's government and regulations. It essentially rules out the Sydney fight Whittaker is hoping for, unless the UFC can work some serious magic behind the scenes to change Strickland's mind or relocate the matchup to US soil. From a competitive standpoint, though, the fight makes all the sense in the world. Both Whittaker and Strickland are coming off tough losses, and both need a win to re-establish themselves in the upper tier of the middleweight division. Whittaker's defeats against Chimaev and de Ridder have created questions about whether his best days are behind him, while Strickland most recently fell short in his bid to recapture middleweight gold in his rematch with Dricus du Plessis at UFC 312. Stylistically, their clash would likely be an all-action affair, with Whittaker's technical striking and speed set against Strickland's relentless pressure and volume punching. For fans, it's the kind of fight that feels guaranteed to deliver excitement, regardless of what's at stake. The real challenge lies in logistics. Whittaker is determined to return on home soil, especially with the UFC expected to bring another major card to Australia next year, and his presence there would be non-negotiable for ticket sales. Strickland, however, seems entrenched in his decision not to compete internationally again, which forces the UFC to consider whether it wants to invest in making the fight happen or look for alternative opponents for Whittaker. Either way, it's clear that Whittaker is eager to get back into the spotlight, and Strickland, whether he accepts or declines, has at least provided an answer that keeps fans talking. What happens next could come down to timing, negotiation, and just how badly the UFC wants to give Whittaker the dance partner he's asking for.
Daniel Cormier has never shied away from discussing the highs and lows of his career, but he's now peeled back another layer on what many still consider the most controversial moment of his championship run. The infamous towelgate incident at UFC 210 has lived in MMA lore for years. And while Cormier admitted back at his Hall of Fame induction that yes, he grabbed the towel to make weight, he's now revealed there's more to the story than just his own actions. In a recent sit-down with Aljamain Sterling, Cormier broke down exactly how things went wrong in Buffalo on that cold April week in 2017. After initially hitting the scale at 206.2 pounds, he looked utterly drained and defeated, seemingly on the verge of disaster with his title defense against Anthony Rumble Johnson just hours away. Minutes later, though, he returned to the scale, leaned ever so slightly on a towel held taut by commission officials, and miraculously registered at the championship limit of 205 pounds. Fans, fighters, and pundits immediately called foul, sparking endless debate. Now, Cormier has pointed the finger at none other than his longtime teammate and fellow AKA product, Luke Rockhold. According to DC, everything unraveled because Rockhold was in a rush. Cormier explained that he had been grinding away on a treadmill at Buffalo University in the middle of a brutal weight cut with 5 pounds still to go. He felt he needed more time, but Rockhold, apparently distracted by other priorities outside the gym, pushed for him to stop early. Luke had a girl lined up, Cormier said with a laugh. He wants nothing more than to leave the gym. So he convinces me, and it's not hard because I want someone to tell me it's okay, that I'm fine and don't need to lose more weight. Everyone else is saying no, he needs to keep going, but Luke goes, he's fine, let him go. And I listened to that moron. That decision, Cormier admitted, is what put him in the awkward position the next morning, leaving him scrambling to make the official weight any way he could. His nutritionist even floated the towel idea, and with the clock ticking, DC went for it. I hope whoever it was worth it to Luke, Cormier joked, still visibly embarrassed but able to laugh about it years later. Cormier went on to defend his title against Johnson that weekend, finishing him via submission in the second round. But the weigh-in controversy has followed him ever since, a rare stain on an otherwise stellar career. What makes this new revelation so fascinating is how it shifts part of the blame away from DC himself and toward the culture of Fight Week, where teammates, friends, and outside influences can sometimes tip the scales, literally and figuratively.